When police arrive at the home of a local handyman to inquire about a missing woman, they have no idea they've stumbled upon a serial predator. It's only after investigators unravel a trail of evidence leading to the woman's disappearance that they discover a murderous plot that has been long in the making and a lifetime of manipulation and lies. Before we begin, we would like to send our sincere condolences to the loved ones of Katie Kenyon. It's early afternoon on April the 22nd, 2022, when Dawn Kenyon receives a troubling message from her 33-year-old daughter, Katie.
This is the bravest thing I've ever had to do. I need to find some peace and sort my mind out, so with the $6,000 Andy gave me to pay the debt off, I'm being free for a while until I figure all this out.
Dawn has always been close to Katie, the middle of her three daughters. The family live in Burnley, a historic market town in the north of England. It is a close-knit community, and the family enjoy a quiet, rural life. Lately, though, things have been more turbulent than usual. Katie, a single mom of two children, has been struggling with anxiety, and it's not uncommon for her to message her mom several times a day. But it's not the contents of this particular message what's worrying Dawn. Call it a mother's intuition, but Dawn is absolutely certain that whoever wrote this message, it wasn't Katie. Dawn phones her daughter's mobile, which goes straight to voicemail. Panicked, she raises the alarm with her two other daughters, Sarah and Jenny. Like their mother, Sarah and Jenny know immediately that something is very wrong. Katie is known for her devotion to her children. In the years since Katie separated from their father, she has thrown herself into creating a loving, stable home. And then there's her dog, Indy, who she has walked religiously since the day she got her. It's inconceivable that she would just up and leave. By early afternoon, Katie's whole family are searching for her. Katie's car is not parked in its usual spot outside of her home. Entering the house with a spare key, her family find that everything is in order, but there's no sign of Katie, and her handbag, phone, and other essentials are nowhere to be found. None of her friends or neighbors have heard from her since the previous day, and when Katie's children wrap up for school in the afternoon, the family's fears only deepen. On their phones, Katie's children have received similar messages from their mother. At 12:18 p.m., Katie's 12-year-old daughter had received a message saying,
I love you, and I'm sorry. Ring your dad. He'll be looking after you for a while from today. I need to get help so I can be a better person for you and your brother. Please know that I love you, and I'm not upset with you. If your dad won't look after you, Andy will always have your back. Remember, ring your dad or Andy.
Katie's 14-year-old son had received a similar text.
Hey, dude, I love you and I'm sorry. You need to ring your dad. He will be looking after you from today. I need to get help. It's not you. I love you. Will you look after your sister and know Andy will always have your back? Get your dad to come and get you while I'm gone. If he won't look after you, you get him to take you to Andy.
Both messages had come from Katie's number, but the language used and the way they were written didn't sound like Katie. And there was another thing. In each message, the word while has been misspelled, without the letter H. It's a word that Katie had never misspelt before. Her family know in their guts that these messages were not written by Katie. But if not Katie, then who? Katie hasn't been the only one sending messages that afternoon. Her on-and-off boyfriend, Andrew Burfield, a 50-year-old builder and handyman, and the Andy referred to in the messages, has sent a message to Katie's son via Instagram, telling him that his mom has gone to a clinic and asked him to care for the dog Indy until she's back. Unaware that the pair had been dating again, Andrew Burfield was one person they hadn't yet contacted. By 5 p.m., Katie's sister, Sarah, had tracked down his details and got him on the phone. Burfield tells Sarah that he's been working on a building site all day and hasn't seen Katie since the previous day. He admits, however, to receiving messages from her. At 2 o'clock, Katie messaged him saying that she was going to drop her car keys, bank card, and the green slip for her car through his letterbox to cover the money that she owed him. In another message, she wrote that she had plans to go to a clinic that day to get treatment for her anxiety. One of the messages had read, "I want you to know I am truly sorry for everything." Assuming she was being dramatic, he tells Sarah that he wasn't concerned and had nothing more to tell her. For Sarah and her family, Burfield's unwillingness to help set off alarm bells. Sarah and her boyfriend Anthony drove to Andrew's house on Todmorton Road in the nearby village of Pettyham. What they were not prepared for, however, is what they discover when they pull up outside of his house. Katie's white Ford Fiesta is parked in clear view outside of Burfield's home. Through the car's windows, they can see Katie's handbag and other personal belongings abandoned in the front seat. Both Sarah and Andrew are now convinced that Katie never left town. The pair knock on the door, and when Andrew refuses to let them in, Anthony threatens to kick Burfield's door down. Burfield calls the police. When police arrive, Sarah and Anthony explain the strange messages from Katie and that her car and personal belongings have been left outside of Burfield's house. Police now want to speak to Andrew Burfield.
These guys outside are concerned about Katie. Do you know where she is?
Yeah, no, I don't. What's happened is that I got a text at 2:30
Today?
Yeah, saying I came to your house this morning. I'll show you the text.
From Katie?
Yeah.
Right.
But when I picked the kids up from school and came home, the keys down behind the door. So we came into the keys behind the door, so she's hidden.
Sorry, back to the items she dropped. Do we have a time frame of when we think she'll drop those items off?
I dropped my kids off at 8:30 at school at 8:30. Came back this morning. Got my kids. She told me she was on a walk.
She what, sorry?
She told me, she said she dropped the car off this morning. And the stuff. Before that message came through, so what you up to? That's me, what you up to, guys? And that were at 1:30. She put, just out on a walk. You?
Officers find Burfield friendly and relaxed. He invites them in to look around his home, joking that they're free to look in the attic as well as in his van. But a full check of the premises turns up nothing suspicious. Police immediately launch a missing persons investigation. Posters are circulated all over town with a description of Katie. A task force is assembled to comb the surrounding area around Andrew's house, her last known whereabouts. But by morning, and with still no word from Katie, her family are desperate. Their fears are compounded further when they discover that someone has permanently disconnected her phone. Cameras outside of Burfield's house capture Katie kissing and hugging Andrew outside of his home in Pettingham on the 21st of April, the day before she went missing. The following morning at 9:20 a.m., she is once again seen parking outside of Burfield's house before getting into his silver transit van. Andrew gets in on the driver's seat beside her. The van then heads to the A670, where it briefly stops at a McDonald's drive-thru. Once again, Katie and Andrew are seen on camera sitting together in the front seat of the van before it heads off-road and into the forest of Bowland. The last image of them in the van is at 9:50 a.m. 51 minutes later, the van is seen returning. This time, though, CCTV cameras show that there is just one person in the van, Andrew Burfield. Mobile phone data from Katie's number corroborates the CCTV footage. On the morning of April 22nd, Katie's phone pings off of several towers en route to the Forest of Bowland. It then pings off the same towers 51 minutes later, heading back toward the A670. Only this time, as the CCTV footage shows, it is not Katie, but only her phone in the vehicle. Multiple messages are sent from Katie's phone before it was finally switched off from Andrew Burfield's house. The evidence is completely at odds with everything Burfield has told them. By 3:45 p.m. on April 23rd, officers are back at Burfield's house. This time, when they enter, they're met with a wall of heat. Despite the spring temperatures outside, Burfield has lit the log burner, and the house, according to police, is like an inferno. Burfield is immediately arrested on suspicion of kidnapping and taken to the station for the first of 4 interviews.
This interview is an urgent interview to try and ascertain the whereabouts of Katie currently. Alright, I'm aware that you've requested legal representation. But at the moment we have been authorised by the superintendent to conduct this urgent interview because there is a real concern for the safety of Katie, and you will get a chance to speak to a solicitor later on. Okay. I need to caution you that you do not have to say anything, but anything you do say may be given in evidence, okay, so you don't have to answer these questions.
Yeah, I understand.
And anything you say can be used in court if we get to that point. Alright. So a very simple question, Andrew. Can you tell me where Katie is?
I can't, I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
Okay, so is there any clue you can give us as to where she might be?
I did give you a clue earlier on. I think she's at like a rehab centre.
A rehab centre?
Or some sort of clinic.
Right, okay. And where would that be?
I haven't got a clue.
Right, okay. And why do you think that she's at that location?
Because that's not that location, one of them locations. Yeah. I think because that's what she talked about. That's what she wanted to do.
Right, okay. So she's given an indication that that's what she wanted to do. But you're telling me you don't know where she is?
No.
Okay. I'm going to appeal to you now to let me know if you do know anything at all.
I'll tell you, I'll go and get her myself.
Yeah? Okay, because I'm sure you're aware that her family are really, really concerned.
Yeah.
The last place she's known to be is parked up on your road.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Which is obviously why you're in custody. So it's reasonable for us to think that you may know where she is.
Yeah, okay.
Alright. So please, if you do know.
I don't, honestly.
Okay. Alright. Joe?
Obviously, like Liz has said, we have got concerns for Katie. Her family are really concerned about her. For our perspective, this appears to be out of character for Katie. Is there anything that you can tell us further to what you've already said that can assist us to maybe locate her tonight, make sure she's okay?
I can say that without being more. I did say to the officers earlier, I mean, they left. I went and got tea sorted out for kids, and then they came back and were arrested. What I said was, I'll go down and I'll write everything down, and have a list for you. Because they were asking me stuff when you were going through my phone. So I said, without my phone, I don't know. I can't answer it. So that's what I've been intending to do tonight. But I'm here.
Where is the last location that you know that she was?
My house.
Right, so you know she was at your house? Yeah. Okay, and when was that?
That was at 9:20 yesterday morning.
Right, okay. So since then you don't know her whereabouts?
I don't know where she's gone from there, no.
Right, okay. Alright then, okay, we needed to give you that opportunity, if you did know, to tell us.
No, I get it, but if I'm being arrested for kidnapping, she's going to need to be fed, isn't she? You know, hiding her somewhere.
Well, yeah. You know, we need...
Actually, that's not the case.
She obviously could be in any state that we want to do everything we can to locate her. No?
Nope.
Alright, okay. I don't have any more questions, Andrew, do you?
Lancashire police launch a massive search effort in hopes of finding Katie alive and well, but the job ahead of them is daunting. The Forest of Bowland is an area of dense woodland with a radius of approximately 25 miles. 60 specialist officers from 4 police forces are assigned to the investigation, making it one of the largest ever missing person searches in the area's history. Among the search force are police and fire service officers, cadaver dogs, the mounted police, the mountain rescue volunteers, air support with heat source cameras, drones, and underwater search teams. But even with those vast resources, finding Katie in this woodland would be like finding a needle in a haystack. But then a witness comes forward who will change everything. At around 9:30 a.m. on the morning of April the 22nd, a member of the public spotted a silver Ford Transit van parked in an area in the Forest of Bowland called Gisborne Forest. The witness describes the van as having a distinctive black panel on one side, the same as Burfield's vehicle. Convinced that this was Burfield's van, police narrow the search to the area of a 5-mile radius leading out from the parking spot. During a second interview with police, Burfield admits to officers that he did in fact go to Gisborne Forest with Katie that day. He says that Katie had made a habit out of writing down all of her thoughts in a journal and then burning the entries as a way of ridding herself of the problems. They planned a picnic, and one of the goals was for Katie to burn her journal entries. No one buys this explanation. As the search continues, Katie's sister Sarah posts on Facebook, "It's now a waiting game." But while the waiting is an agony for Katie's family, one thing is certain, and that is who is responsible for Katie's disappearance. And her family have long had their reservations about Andrew Burfield. When Katie ran into Burfield in 2019, she was at a particularly vulnerable point in her life. At 50 years old, Burfield seemed stable and to have his life together. Like Katie, he was a single parent of 2. He was supportive and understanding of her struggles. But it wasn't long before her family noticed some concerning signs. Andrew was controlling, and soon Katie was changing her behavior just to keep Burfield happy. They had also begun to fight regularly. Her family noticed that when Katie would express her feelings, Burfield would tell her that it was her anxiety distorting her thinking. Soon it was clear that he was using her mental health as a weapon to manipulate and control her with. Of course, those who knew Burfield years before Katie were already well acquainted with this side of his character. Burfield had long held a reputation for being a fantasist, a pathological liar, and a manipulator. Over the years, he had numerous run-ins with the law. In 2001, he had been jailed for attempting to pervert the course of justice after stealing a car belonging to his boss and selling it for £2,700, then convincing a former girlfriend to provide him with a false alibi. He was also a compulsive womanizer. Records from his computer showed that he was propositioning women on every forum available, from Facebook to dating sites. Andrew Burfield was not the kind of man you would welcome into your family. But Katie's family hadn't known the real Burfield. What they did know was that he liked to repeatedly remind Katie that she was mentally ill, then increase her dependence on him by offering to pay for therapy. Katie accepted his money for therapy in good faith, but by 2021 their fights had escalated to the point where the pair had gone their separate ways. Katie told her family that she hopes for a fresh start. Burfield, on the other hand, had not taken the breakup so well. One morning, Katie discovered that her Ford Fiesta had been vandalized and the tires slashed. While she never told anyone that she believed the culprit to be Andrew, she never reported the crime to police. Then, on February 18th of 2022, she received a high court writ ordering that she owed £4,000 to Andrew Burfield for therapy fees. It was money she did not have. And as the deadline came and went, the overdue fees mounted up. Soon she owed over £6,000. Unable to pay the money, her anxiety went into overdrive. She feared losing her precious home that she had created for her children and that debt collectors would take all of her possessions. Katie took to labeling Burfield the Tinder swindler to friends and family. And it wasn't just the money that worried her. Something in Katie feared what Burfield was capable of. In one message to her mother, Dawn, she wrote that she was scared of him. Dawn remembers another message from Katie that said, "I'm paranoid to death he's going to do something. I couldn't sleep all night." Katie also told her sister that if she ever went missing, it would be Burfield who had done something to her. In March of 2022, however, Andrew seemed to suddenly have a change of heart. He told Katie that he would pay the overdue fees and ensure the bailiffs that they would no longer bother her. On March the 8th, Katie emailed the debt company explaining this and that Burfield was going to pay the balance. He also begged for forgiveness. In a moment of weakness, Katie relented and the pair reconciled. Meanwhile, on March the 9th, the day after telling Katie he would pay her overdue fees, Burfield had contacted the debt collectors demanding that they put more pressure on Katie. Burfield was deliberately toying with her, pulling strings to increase the pressure on her, thereby forcing her to cooperate with him as her only way out. On March the 25th, he rang the debt collectors again, this time saying that Katie had come to his house and abused him. He demanded that they force her to pay up. When Katie messaged him in a panic, he assured her that she was overreacting and in the meantime to think about going into a mental health clinic. "I'm thinking we need to get you back on the right path, Babs," he wrote. But investigators are about to learn more about the movements of Andrew Burfield in the days before and after Katie's disappearance. The homeowner of a property on Hillingdon Road in Burnley told police that on Saturday morning after Katie went missing, Burfield had unexpectedly turned up at around 8 a.m. According to the homeowner, Burfield asked him what day his bins were collected on the street. That struck him as odd. Officers immediately drive to the property and find the bins are still full. Buried under household trash, they find a plastic bag smeared with blood. Inside, it contains a pair of blood-stained flip-flops matching the description of those Katie had been wearing, and several heavily blood-stained bags. Police now changed the investigation from that of a missing persons inquiry to a murder investigation.
This started as a kidnapper missing person inquiry on Friday. Yesterday, it dramatically changed to a murder hunt when the police charged their suspect, rearrested their suspect on suspicion of murder. This evening, they have announced that he has now been charged with Katie Kenyon's murder. We got a brief statement from Lancashire Police. It says Andrew Burfield, 50, of Todmorden Road, Burnley, has been charged with Katie Kenyon's murder. He's due to appear at Blackburn Magistrates Court at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Katie's family have been made aware, obviously, by the police. She's still being supported by trained family. They're being supported by trained family liaison officers. This is Gisborne Forest, half an hour, 35 minutes or so away from where she was taken in this silver transit van that the police located here. They know that she left Burnley. They know that it was here in that van and was then back in Burnley.
Her devastated family grapple with this horrifying new development. While the police fast-track the testing of the blood traces with forensics, Burfield volunteers for another interview with the police. He admits to the police that the pair had gone to the forest that day, a place where they had been twice before. After setting up their picnic, Katie had spotted an axe on top of a cooler box and had made a bet with Burfield that he couldn't throw the axe accurately enough to knock a Coke can out of her hand. He went for a tree instead and threw the axe with both arms overhead. At the same time, Katie had begun sitting down. He watched in horror as it flew directly towards Katie before hitting her in the back of the head.
I believe that you want to speak to us today, so I'm just going to hand it over to you to tell us what you want to say.
We parked the van up and we went to our site, which we always go to. I say always, we've been twice.
Right.
And that's where she still is.
That's where she still is. Okay. So we don't know what went wrong. You were aiming at the tree and...
No, I can't even say I slipped, fell, nothing. I just don't even know what went wrong. It's just stupid, isn't it? That I'll ever do that. It's so stupid.
How close was she from you?
8 feet. 10 feet. There's no help there, you know. There's nothing.
No.
No people. There was signal on the phone. They won't carry her. Exactly. So if a boyfriend can't carry you, you won't go for it.
So talk me through these next seconds then. This has happened now.
I just don't know what I'm doing, honestly. I don't have hope and blood. I just go to her straight away.
Then he'd panicked. Unable to carry her body to his van, he decided to leave her in the forest. Not wanting animals to find her, he dug a grave and placed her in it, covering it with leaves and sticks. Then he had tied a bag to a tree to mark the spot. His plan at this point, he said, was to get home, deal with his children, get his finances in order, and then take his own life. He also said that, in a panic, he'd burned Katie's phone in a log burner and dumped the charred remains into a nearby bin before moving his own SIM card to a new phone. Only the police are not buying this story.
The thing is, Andrew, you've told us a lot over the last few days, haven't you? And you've told us a lot, certainly today, a lot of information. And a lot of it just does not add up, okay? And ultimately, we don't believe you of what you've said. Okay, but do not believe that this has been an accident. This is about your control and your over Katie.
Homicide investigators search Burfield's van and house again for evidence. This time, they find blood inside Andrew Burfield's washing machine. Without a body, though, they are somewhat helpless to prove that it was anything but an accident. But a forensic examination of Burfield's phone will shed more light on the extent of Burfield's twisted mind. Burfield's iPhone had last been backed up to the iCloud on April the 4th. An examination of its contents revealed that despite all of Burfield's recent proclamations of love for Katie, he had begun secretly seeing another woman. In messages exchanged between the pair, Burfield tells the woman that he owns a portfolio of properties around the country. They chat about potentially moving to Scotland together and buying a house. Meanwhile, on the day prior to Katie's disappearance, Burfield drove to his parents' house after requesting to borrow a spade. He had then switched off his phone for 90 minutes, turning it on again at 10:03 p.m., not long after his van was caught on CCTV footage returning from Gisborne Forest. The next morning, the morning of April the 22nd, he and Katie messaged back and forth again. Katie had sent Andrew a message saying that she was ready for the picnic and excited for a new chapter. Burfield confirmed that he would drive her to a special unit where she could finally get help. But the phone data revealed that Burfield had not taken his phone with him to the forest that day. At 9:07 a.m., Katie had made her last phone call. Between 10:24 and 11:15 a.m., her phone had stopped connecting with the local mobile network. At 12:18, the first of a series of strange messages had been sent from Katie's phone telling her family that she was going away. At 12:34 p.m., Burfield sent a message from his own phone to the woman he had been dating, saying that something had come up involving his children and that he would be unable to make their date as planned. He'd then sent messages from Katie's phone to her children and mother. He had also messaged himself from Katie's phone and repeatedly messaged her back asking if she was okay and to call him. He'd also left her voicemails.
It doesn't have to be like this. We can sort it out. Whatever help you need, whatever you need from me, or anybody else. I just need to know you're safe and where you're going, that's all. What do you want me to do? Go and get the dog today? Tonight? Kids ringing me? I don't. Just let me know what's happening. I ain't got a clue. Please. I love you.
That evening, he messaged the woman he had been dating again, saying that he was properly knackered. But police are about to discover the worst was yet to come. Saved on the phone's Notes application, they find a series of long, drafted messages. The messages had been written by Burfield and edited and amended multiple times since. The final versions were almost word-for-word identical to the messages he sent to Katie's mother and children. But the most chilling part, the original had been written on March the 17th, many weeks before Burfield took Katie to the forest. He had been planning her murder for over a month. In a third interview, and not knowing the extent of evidence against him, Burfield admits to police that he went to the forest the day before April 22nd. He tells police that it was to walk his dog, then says that it looked like a good spot for a picnic that he had planned with Katie the following day. Meanwhile, using the new information from Burfield's confession, the specialist search team located a bag tied to a tree. But they could find no sign of a grave or burial site. At a loss, they take the risky step of enlisting Burfield's help to find the burial site. Dressed in a forensic suit and handcuffed, Burfield is escorted by officers and his solicitor to an area around 70 meters from the place where his van had been seen parked in Gisborne Forest. There, he sits down on a spot just meters from where the police had already been digging. Police take a closer look at the area indicated by Burfield. The spot where Burfield is sitting is in a densely wooded area where the grass and foliage are undisturbed. There is no mound of earth or anything resembling a hastily dug grave.
But as much as we were hopeful we found her, there was a couple of things that were unusual as well, weren't about that grave, in terms of unusual, like, for example, if you are to place a body inside a grave, the void, the size of one of us inside a grave, you would expect to create a mound subsequently. You wouldn't have a perfectly flat surface. This had a perfectly flat surface. It was finished impeccably.
Despite their misgivings, an excavation is begun. As the topsoil is removed, a root network from a nearby tree is exposed, baffling police even further. And yet, several feet into the excavation, human remains are discovered. The search for Katie Kenyon has come to a devastating end.
I want to bring you some breaking news now coming to us from Lancashire. Police, in connection with the search for missing Katie Kenyon, 33-year-old mother of two, the police say they have sadly found the body of a woman. The discovery was made last night in an area as part of the Forest of Bowland after receiving new information. And at this stage, they say they're not in a position to formally confirm the woman's identity, but they do believe that the body is that of Katie. Her family have been told, and they continue to be supported by specially trained officers. So a body has been found in the search for missing Katie Kenyon. Andrew Burfield, who's 50 and of Burnley, has been charged with her murder.
How had he managed to disguise the body so well? When digging the grave, Burfield had meticulously removed each layer, placing a layer of turf, then topsoil, then clay beside the grave, before replacing them in the exact same order, all without severing any of the roots that ran through the burial site. An archaeologist and a forensic botanist said it would have been impossible for Burfield to dig the grave in the time he was known to be in the forest with Katie. This was a grave that had taken time and meticulous planning. The forensic team also found prints from 2 different sets of footwear around the burial site, suggesting that the grave had been dug on different days. Meanwhile, the results from Katie's post-mortem revealed a very different story to the one Burfield had told police. Katie had been hit not once, but 12 times in the head. A pathologist described Katie as having suffered severe head injuries with multiple fractures caused by a heavy weapon, such as an axe or a spade. Katie's funeral service was held in May of 2022. Mourners followed a horse-drawn carriage carrying her coffin as her family and loved ones gathered to pay their respects. Her family tell mourners that their beloved daughter, sister, and mother had been taken from their family too soon, and they felt stuck in a heartbreaking nightmare. Andrew Burfield's trial begins on November the 14th, 2022. He enters a plea of not guilty. The trial is expected to last roughly 3 weeks. The prosecution lays out their case, including the results of the coroner's report. For many weeks, Burfield had, they say, ensured Katie was beholden to him by promising to pay the money she owed, all while increasing the pressure on her so that he could enact his murderous plan that he had hatched weeks earlier. In the face of overwhelming evidence against him, on the 3rd day of his trial, Andrew Burfield dramatically changed his plea to guilty in the murder of Katie Kenyon. He is sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 32 years to be served. There is no logical reason for Burfield's action and no why. Burfield seemed to simply take pleasure in the control and torture of the women he had encountered, and, unable to control Katie, took the decision to plot her murder instead, ending the life of a loving young mom and tearing apart a family.
So asked me to personally thank every person who's been involved in the case to bring Katie's killer to justice. They also think it's important to express who Katie was, and the family have given me a few words that I'm now going to read on their behalf. Katie's a happy, loving mum of 2. She had a whole life ahead of her. Katie was beautiful and silly. She had a truly beautiful soul. She always surrounded herself with children, her own and anybody else's who wanted to join in. She would take kids and the dogs everywhere with her. She'd even try to set up summer camp for the local children so they had something to do and somewhere to go. She loved the outdoors and she loved people. We miss her. We miss her very much beyond words, and we will never get to express our loss.
If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like the video, comment down below your take on it, and please subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to hit the notification bell in order to stay up to date each time we reveal a new shocking case. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes peeled. You never know what's lurking in the shadows.